For 7 years, she slept beside a king who never touched her. Not once. Not even by mistake. But on the night the moon turned red and the palace doors locked themselves, the Alpha King finally reached for her. And what he did next changed the fate of the entire kingdom. This is not a love story that begins with passion. It is a story of silence. Of rejection disguised as duty. Of a queen chosen by fate but ignored by the man destined to claim her. And tonight, the waiting ends. Before we go deeper, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. What you're about to hear only gets darker from here. She was crowned queen at 18, adorned in gold that felt heavier than chains. The Alpha King chose her in front of the council, in front of the elders, in front of the spirits. The kingdom celebrated for 7 days. Drums echoed. Wine flowed. Songs filled the night. But when the celebrations ended, something strange began. The Alpha King never touched her. Not on their wedding night. Not after battles. Not after victories. Not even after grief. 7 years passed. In the Alpha Kingdom, an untouched queen was not just unusual, it was dangerous. Whispers followed her through the palace corridors. Servants bowed but avoided her eyes. Elders watched her with suspicion. A queen who bore no heir was seen as a curse. Yet she endured. She learned the palace rhythms. She memorized the quiet hours. She ruled with patience, kindness, and restraint. She fed the poor, protected widows, and settled disputes when the king was away. The people loved her, even if the king kept his distance. Still, every night, she lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to a heartbeat that never reached for hers. And the longer the king waited, the more the kingdom began to fear her. Body, rising tension. By the 7th year, the rumors grew teeth. Some said the Alpha King rejected her because she was weak. Others claimed she carried dark blood. A few whispered that touching her would awaken something forbidden. The queen heard it all. She said nothing. But deep inside, a quiet pain hardened into resolve. She stopped waiting to be chosen. She focused on becoming unbreakable. Then the signs began. Animals refused to enter the palace grounds. The sacred flames flickered blue instead of gold. Dreams of blood and fire haunted the guards. And the moon began to change. On the final night of the 7th year, it rose crimson. The elders panicked. The palace gates sealed on their own. Wind screamed through halls that had never known storms. Ancient symbols glowed on the stone floors. This was not coincidence. This was prophecy. Halfway through the night, the Alpha King finally turned toward her. If this story is already pulling you in, don't forget to like and subscribe, because what happens next will reveal why he waited 7 years, and what he was afraid of. Her heart pounded, not with hope, but with dread. Something about the air felt wrong. Heavy. Alive. The king's restraint was no longer calm. It was desperate. For 7 years, he had avoided her not out of indifference, but out of fear. Fear of what would happen the moment he touched her. As the red moon reached its highest point, the ancient mark on her wrist began to glow for the first time. And the Alpha King realized the truth too late. She was never rejected. She was sealed. And the seal was breaking. The glow on her wrist was not light. It was memory waking up. The ancient mark burned softly at first, like an ember beneath skin, then pulsed in rhythm with the red moon above the palace. The air thickened. Walls that had stood for centuries groaned as if they remembered something they had sworn to forget. This was the moment the Alpha King had been running from. For 7 years, he had mastered distance, discipline, and denial. Not because he lacked desire, but because touching her before the right night would have destroyed them both. The elders knew part of it. The spirits knew all of it. But she had been left in the dark, carrying a destiny too heavy to explain. The seal was never meant to last forever. It was meant to hold until the kingdom was ready. Rising revelation. Long before she was chosen as queen, before crowns and ceremonies, she had been marked at birth. Not as a curse, but as a safeguard. A living vessel designed to contain something ancient, powerful, and dangerously pure. The Alpha Kingdom was built on borrowed power. Power stolen generations ago from the wild forces beyond the borders. That power demanded balance. And balance always demanded a price. She was that price. Every night the Alpha King slept beside her untouched, he was buying the kingdom more time. Every year he waited, the seal weakened but did not break. But now, on the 7th year, under a blood moon, the waiting had reached its limit. The mark spread like living ink across her skin, mapping paths that mirrored the old runes carved beneath the palace foundations. The same symbols the elders pretended were only decoration. The same symbols the Alpha King avoided walking over. Her body reacted before her mind could understand. Strength surged through her veins. Not violent strength, but awareness. She suddenly felt the palace breathing. She felt the fear of the guards. She felt the land itself shifting, restless after centuries of silence. And still, she felt calm. That calm frightened the Alpha King more than any storm. The kingdom had always believed the Alpha King was its greatest weapon. They were wrong. She was. If you're feeling the tension rising, this is your reminder to like and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. The truth about her power is only beginning to unfold. For 7 years, she had endured loneliness disguised as honor. She had smiled through humiliation, ruled through doubt, and loved through silence. Now, the pain she buried so carefully transformed into clarity. She was never weak. She was restrained. The seal was not punishment, it was protection. Not for her, but for everyone else. As the red moon darkened, memories not her own began to surface. Visions of a time before crowns, before kings, when power roamed freely and the world nearly tore itself apart. She saw why the ancients created vessels. Why they chose queens instead of warriors. Why gentleness was required to hold something so immense. And why love, real love, was the final key. The Alpha King had been waiting for more than prophecy. He had been waiting for her to become ready. Outside the palace, the people felt it too. Crops bent toward the walls. Fires dimmed. Wolves howled in unison. The kingdom was being called to witness something it had long forgotten. Inside the chamber, the seal cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. A thin fracture of light escaped, racing upward like a signal sent to the sky. The spirits responded instantly. Wind slammed into the palace. The sacred flames turned white. This was no longer preventable. The Alpha King knew the final truth now, touching her would not awaken destruction. It would choose who she became. As the crack widened, the mark pulsed violently, and the first whisper of the ancient power escaped its prison. The kingdom had feared the wrong question all along. It was never what she was. It was what she would choose to be once fully awakened. The whisper did not sound like a voice. It sounded like truth remembering itself. As the fracture on her wrist widened, the power inside her did not rush out in chaos. It paused. It observed. It tested the world it was about to return to. The palace trembled, but not from destruction, from recognition. The land knew her. That was the secret the Alpha Kingdom buried for centuries. She was not merely holding the ancient force. She was its rightful home. Deepening revelation. Long ago, before thrones were carved from stone and bloodlines defined by crowns, the power of the wild chose guardians, not rulers. Those guardians were meant to guide balance, not command it. But humans grew greedy. Kings wanted control. Elders wanted permanence. So they did the unthinkable. They sealed the guardian essence into human queens, disguising divine duty as royal marriage. Each generation weakened the bond. Each seal grew more fragile. And by the seventh cycle, only one vessel could survive full awakening without destroying the realm. She was that vessel. Not because she was strong, but because she was compassionate. 7 years of silence had shaped her heart. Loneliness had softened her judgment. Rejection had stripped away pride. Power could not corrupt someone who had already learned humility through pain. That was why the Alpha King never touched her. If the seal broke before her spirit matured, the power would have consumed everything. And now, the seal was responding, not to prophecy, not to the moon, but to her will. If this moment is gripping you, pause and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because what she chooses next will determine whether the Alpha Kingdom survives or falls. Inner transformation. As the power stirred, her memories sharpened. Every insult she endured. Every night she turned her face away to hide silent tears. Every time she ruled with mercy when cruelty would have been easier. Those experiences did not weaken her. They refined her. The power within her shifted tone. It stopped pushing. It started listening. For the first time since the ancients were sealed away, the Force felt trust. Outside, the elders felt terror. Their authority, built on secrets and half-truths, was unraveling. They had feared her barrenness, never realizing it was deliberate. An awakened guardian could not bear a child until balance was restored. The Alpha King felt it too. Relief mixed with fear. He had protected her from destiny, but destiny no longer needed protection. Rising stakes. The crack spread across the palace floor, following ancient runes hidden beneath marble and gold. The kingdom itself was opening a path for her. Fires bowed low. Wind circled instead of raging. Even the red moon dimmed, as if waiting for instruction. This was no rebellion. This was restoration. But restoration demanded choice. The power could cleanse the kingdom, washing away corruption, exposing lies, dismantling false authority. Or it could withdraw, abandoning humanity to its own decay forever. Both options carried consequences. And both required her consent. Emotional peak. She realized the final cruelty of the silence she had endured. They had never asked her what she wanted. She had been chosen, sealed, married, and ignored, all to preserve balance without her voice. Now, the power waited. Not for the Alpha King. Not for the elders. For her. Final cliffhanger. As the crack reached her heart, the ancient force surged upward, and the Alpha King felt the bond between ruler and guardian begin to dissolve. If she fully awakened, the age of Alpha Kings would end. The kingdom was about to lose its crown. And the world was about to meet its true guardian. No pause, straight into consequences. The moment the bond began to dissolve, the palace reacted like a living thing being torn in two. Crowns cracked. Banners fell. The ancient throne, symbol of Alpha authority for generations, split down the middle, not from force, but from rejection. The kingdom itself was choosing to release what it no longer needed. The age of rulers was ending. And she stood at the center of it all, calm in a storm she had unknowingly carried her entire life. Power with a price. The ancient force rose higher, no longer a whisper but a presence. Not loud. Not violent. Certain. It flowed through her like memory returning to blood, illuminating every truth the kingdom had buried. The elders felt exposed. Their secrets surfaced without sound. Deals made in darkness. Blood spilled in the name of stability. Laws bent to preserve power instead of people. Balance does not punish. Balance reveals. And revelation was more terrifying than judgment. She understood now why the Alpha King had suffered in silence. His role was never to rule her. It was to protect the world from awakening her too soon, and to protect her from a world that would fear her power. 7 years of restraint was not coldness. It was devotion. If this transformation is hitting you emotionally, like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what she decides next will either save the Alpha Kingdom, or erase it forever. Human flaws, deeper emotion. Despite the power swelling inside her, doubt crept in. She questioned herself. Was she strong enough to choose mercy after years of quiet suffering? Could she trust a kingdom that never trusted her? Could she forgive a man who denied her love, even if it was to save her? The ancient force did not answer. It never had. True balance demanded human choice, not divine command. The world responds. Beyond the palace walls, the people fell to their knees, not from fear, but recognition. Crops straightened. Rivers cleared. Wounds healed faster. Children laughed without knowing why. This was the power they were meant to live with, not under. Yet power without restraint could still destroy. And she felt it, how easily she could strip the elders of their titles, shatter the monarchy, and walk away as something more than human. That path was tempting. But it felt wrong. The moral thread emerges. She finally understood the lesson written into her life. Pain does not always mean abandonment. Silence does not always mean rejection. And power without compassion is just another form of tyranny. The ancient force pulsed, acknowledging her realization. Tension spikes. Then something went wrong. The fracture in the palace floor widened beyond the ancient markings. The power encountered resistance, not from her, but from a hidden seal buried deeper than any before. A fail-safe. The elder's final betrayal. If she completed her awakening, the hidden seal would activate and collapse the palace, killing her and the power together to preserve human rule. They had planned to destroy her if she ever became uncontrollable. The realization cut deeper than any blade. Final cliffhanger. The ancient force surged in warning. She had seconds to choose. Complete the awakening and risk annihilation. Or suppress herself forever to let the old order survive. And for the first time in 7 years, the Alpha King could not protect her from this choice. Time did not stop. It narrowed. The hidden seal beneath the palace awakened fully, grinding ancient stone against ancient stone, preparing to bury truth under rubble. The elder's final act was not courage, it was fear sharpened into cruelty. If balance could not be controlled, it would be erased. She felt the countdown in her bones. The ancient force within her surged, not in panic, but in urgency. It showed her fragments of futures, not promises. Paths branching into consequence. None were painless. One path led to ascension and sacrifice. Another led to silence and survival. A third, thin and dangerous, offered change without annihilation. That third path demanded something no one expected. The unexpected realization. The kingdom believed balance meant choosing between power and restraint. They were wrong. True balance required sharing the burden. For the first time, she understood the missing piece the ancients never solved. Power sealed into one vessel would always be feared. Power spread with consent could be protected. She was not meant to carry everything alone. 7 years of isolation had taught her that lesson the hard way. If this moment has you holding your breath, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the decision she's about to make will rewrite the laws of the Alpha Kingdom forever. Emotional turning point. The pain of betrayal burned, but it did not harden her heart. She remembered the people she ruled quietly. The farmers she protected. The children who smiled when she passed. They were not the elders. They were the kingdom. Destroying everything would punish the innocent along with the guilty. Suppressing herself would condemn future generations to the same lies. So she chose the narrow path. The hardest one. The radical decision. Instead of releasing the ancient force outward or sealing it back inside, she turned it inward, then outward again, gently, like breath. Shared between lungs. The power resisted at first. It had never been divided. But it listened. Threads of light spilled from her, weaving into the foundations of the palace, into the land, into the people themselves, not as dominance, but as awareness. Not everyone received the same measure. Only what their hearts could hold. The kingdom inhaled together. The hidden seal hesitated. This outcome had never been planned for. Rising consequences. The elders felt their control dissolve. Authority built on secrecy could not survive shared truth. Their failsafe stuttered, confused by a power that refused to be centralized. The Alpha King felt the shift most deeply. For the first time, the bond between him and the kingdom no longer flowed through a crown, but through responsibility. His strength remained, but it was no longer absolute. And he accepted it. That acceptance stabilized the fracture, just enough. Moral weaving through the plot. Power hoarded creates fear. Power shared creates duty. She understood now why the ancients failed. They trusted structures more than people. She trusted people more than structures. But trust always carries risk. The cost revealed. The division saved the kingdom, but it drained her. The ancient force receded, no longer sealed, no longer whole. She felt herself weakening, mortality rushing back like a tide reclaiming shore. Balance demanded payment. And the price was her eternity. She would live. But she would no longer be timeless. As the palace stabilized and the red moon began to fade, a final shock rippled through the land. Beyond the kingdom's borders, something ancient stirred, drawn by the sudden release of shared power. Balance had been restored. But balance had also been noticed. And whatever was coming, was not human. No delay, straight into the final storm. What stirred beyond the kingdom's borders was older than fear itself. The shared awakening had sent a signal across realms long forgotten, calling not guardians, not kings, but watchers. Forces that thrived on imbalance. Beings that fed on worlds where power shifted hands. For centuries, they slept. Now, they were awake. The land trembled, but this time not in confusion. In readiness. The final test. She felt it immediately. Not as terror, but as clarity. The ancient force no longer lived fully inside her, yet its wisdom remained. She understood the final truth the ancients never reached: balance was not a state to achieve once. It was a responsibility to uphold, again and again. The watchers approached the borders, testing the shared power flowing through the land. They expected chaos. They expected greed. They expected humans to fracture under sudden responsibility. They were wrong. Because the power had not been given to rule. It had been given to protect. The kingdom stands together. Farmers felt courage steady their hands. Warriors felt restraint temper their strength. Elders who still clung to control felt exposed and small. Authority no longer came from titles, it came from trust. The Alpha King stood not as a ruler above the people, but among them. His strength remained vast, but now guided by humility instead of dominance. And she, no longer a sealed vessel, no longer a silent queen, stood as a living reminder of what sacrifice looked like without bitterness. The watchers circled. They found no crack to enter. A balanced land offered no feast. The final release. Realizing there was nothing to consume, the ancient beings withdrew, fading back into myth. The borders sealed, not by force, but by harmony. The world exhaled. The red moon returned to silver. The storm passed. And the age of fear ended. Resolution. The monarchy did not fall that night. It transformed. Crowns became symbols, not chains. No delay, straight into the final storm. What stirred beyond the kingdom's borders was older than fear itself. The shared awakening had sent a signal across realms long forgotten, calling not guardians, not kings, but watchers. Forces that thrived on imbalance. Beings that fed on worlds where power shifted hands. For centuries, they slept. Now, they were awake. The land trembled, but this time not in confusion. In readiness. The final test. She felt it immediately. Not as terror, but as clarity. The ancient force no longer lived fully inside her, yet its wisdom remained. She understood the final truth the ancients never reached: balance was not a state to achieve once. It was a responsibility to uphold, again and again. The Watchers approached the borders, testing the shared power flowing through the land. They expected chaos. They expected greed. They expected humans to fracture under sudden responsibility. They were wrong. Because the power had not been given to rule. It had been given to protect. The kingdom stands together. Farmers felt courage steady their hands. Warriors felt restraint temper their strength. Elders who still clung to control felt exposed and small. Authority no longer came from titles, it came from trust. The Alpha King stood not as a ruler above the people, but among them. His strength remained vast, but now guided by humility instead of dominance. And she, no longer a sealed vessel, no longer a silent queen, stood as a living reminder of what sacrifice looked like without bitterness. The Watchers circled. They found no crack to enter. A balanced land offered no feast. The final release. Realizing there was nothing to consume, the ancient beings withdrew, fading back into myth. The borders sealed, not by force, but by harmony. The world exhaled. The red moon returned to silver. The storm passed. And the age of fear ended. Resolution. The monarchy did not fall that night. It transformed. Crowns became symbols, not chains. Councils opened to voices once ignored. Queens were no longer chosen to be sealed, but to be heard. She remained by the Alpha King's side, not as an untouched figure of prophecy, but as an equal, respected, present, human. For the first time in 7 years, silence was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. The moral explained, clear and strong. This story teaches a powerful lesson. Sometimes, what feels like rejection is actually protection. Sometimes, silence hides sacrifice. And true power is not about control, it is about responsibility. The Alpha King did not avoid her because she was unworthy. He waited because love sometimes means restraint. And she was never weak for enduring. She was strong because she chose compassion over revenge, wisdom over destruction, and balance over domination. Final emotional note. 7 years of waiting were not wasted. They shaped a heart capable of saving a world. And the kingdom learned what many never do. That power shared wisely builds a future. But power hoarded always destroys one. Final CTA, closing. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more powerful stories like this. And remember, not every silence is empty. Not every delay is denial. Sometimes, it's destiny waiting for the right moment. The end. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe, explore our older videos, and let us know the country you're watching from.